I am Anonymous. Chapter 3, A Test of Friendship, Part 2. Anon walks down the street towards Sugar Cube Corner. He mentally checks off his to-do list. One more thing to do. He had put in an order for a double chocolate cake with fudge frosting. Anon discovered that that specific kind of cake was Princess Celestia's favorite. So whenever she came to Ponyville, Anon prepared cake and tea. Anon doesn't like to drink tea, so he sticks with hard apple cider or bourbon. He arrives at the bakery and opens the front door. A small bell jingles as the door hits it. As Anon walks inside, he sees townsponys in line and eating the sugary treats they purchased at some tables. Anon patiently waits in line until it's his turn to be served. Mrs. Cake smiles a friendly smile as Anon approaches. "Hello there, Anon," Mrs. Cake greets. "What can I do for you?" "I'm here to pick up my cake order." "Oh, yes. Let me tell Pinkie Pie to get that for you." Anon steps aside as Mrs. Cake calls out to Pinkie Pie. Within moments, Pinkie walks out of the kitchen with a bright pink box on her head. She arrives at the counter and carefully slides the box on top of it. Anon reaches into his pocket to grab the bits. "One double chocolate cake with fudge frosting as requested," Pinkie Pie says with a cheerful smile. "Thanks, Pinkie. How much will it cost?" 15 bits. Anon sets 20 bits worth of coins on the counter. "Keep the change, Pinkie. Consider it a tip." "Thank you," Pinkie thanks. "So, I guess our mutual friend is coming over today?" Anon nods. Being Ponyville's #1 baker, Pinkie Pie knows every pony's favorite dessert, including Princess Celestia. When Anon frequently orders this specific cake, Pinkie Pie put 2 and 2 together. She had asked Anon if Princess Celestia had been visiting him. He didn't deny it, but he made her promise not to tell anyone, even Twilight. He didn't want ponies coming around, disturbing him and Celestia. Surprisingly, Anon found that he could trust her with this secret, mainly because he discovered that Pinkie's pinky promise wasn't some childish bullshit scam. "I hope you have a good time with your friend, and tell your friend I said hi," Pinkie Pie says. "I will," Anon promises. Anon turns around and leaves Sugar Cube Corner. He takes more precautionary measures than usual to ensure Rainbow Dash doesn't attempt to pull another one of her harmless pranks. The amount of bullshit in that description. Interestingly enough, it was Fluttershy who said that Anon wasn't too hard on her because he viewed her as a doormat. Not that he knew from experience. Anyway, Anon walks back to his house without falling victim to pranks or being stopped. He arrives just in time for the clock to show at 11:55 a.m. Anon sets the cake on the table and takes some finger foods he made out of the fridge. Afterward, he put some silverware and 2 glasses next to the food. Princess Celestia was supplying the picnic baskets, so Anon didn't need to pack up any of the stuff. When Anon finished setting the stuff out, he went into his bedroom and changed into his shorts. He laid out his knife on the nightstand. Then he sat on his couch and began to read another book Twilight let him borrow. It is called The Tale of Two Sisters. He started where he left off. It was when Celestia and Luna's parents, King Cosmos and Queen Gallixa, had just passed away, and the mantle of rulers of Equestria fell upon the daughters. Anon had found it quite interesting that Cosmos and Gallixa not only moved the sun and moon, they protected the planet from other celestial bodies, like comets, meteors, or even rogue stars and planets. They were so powerful that some ponies believed them to be gods and worshipped them. During the reign of Celestia and Luna, Anon reads about many wars, countless battles, and many villains they defeated. Eventually, Anon reads about the fall and banishment of Princess Luna. That part shocks him. Was Luna a bit dark and morbid? Sure, but not so dark to where she would try overthrowing her sister and bringing Equestria into an eternal night. The banishment is difficult for Anon to comprehend. 1,000 years on the moon. Anon can't even begin to imagine the sorrow that Princess Celestia had to go through during those 1,000 years. Anon is snapped out of his deep thought when he hears someone knocking on the door. He glances at the clock as he gets up. It is 12:45 p.m. He opens the door and Princess Celestia is standing there with 2 picnic baskets, surrounded by her magic, floating behind her. "Hello, Anon," she greets. "Hey, Tia, come on in," Anon says as he gestures for her to enter. "Forgive me for being late. Morning court took longer than I anticipated." "What happened?" Anon motions for Celestia to sit on the couch. "For the most part, the court was fine. However, the final patrons to come in caused morning court to extend past its ending time." "I can assume that the patrons were being unreasonable." "You could say that. It was 2 noble ponies. They came to me to settle a dispute of whose child's wedding I should attend first." Anon tries to stifle a laugh. He puts his hand over his mouth to cover his smile. Princess Celestia notices this and looks at Anon with a look on her face that he's never seen before. It's frustration. "What's so funny?" she asks. "Sorry, Tia. 2 ponies come to you asking to settle something they could have settled themselves. The argument itself is ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, I found it funny," Anon explains. "It's okay, Anon. My day has been so frustrating. I love my little ponies and all, but it is aggravating when they come to me to judge in every single petty dispute they have." "Nothing like dealing with over-pampered, egotistical megalomaniacs. I know the type." Princess Celestia and Anon sit in awkward silence for a moment. "I'm sorry, Anon. I didn't mean to vent to you about my day," Princess Celestia apologizes. "I vent to you all the time. It's only fair that you get to do it," Anon reassures. "Let's go on our picnic as we planned. I'm famished." Celestia and Anon get up from their seats on the couch. They place Anon's things that he had set out in the picnic baskets. Then, the 2 leave Anon's house and walk to the woods behind Anon's house. Princess Celestia carries the 2 baskets while Anon leads them through the woods. After about 10 minutes, they arrived at the spot that Anon has designated as the picnic spot. The spot is 10 feet from the river, flowing slowly and quietly. Princess Celestia can tell the area has been cleared, more than likely by Anon. A small waterfall is upstream, which adds to the area's beauty. The water is practically transparent. Upon seeing the sight, Princess Celestia's frustration, irritation, and exhaustion fade away. She lies a red and white plaid picnic blanket beside a large sweet gum tree. Next, she sets the picnic baskets on the blanket. Anon sits down next to Princess Celestia. They open the baskets and begin taking the food and drinks. Then, they begin to eat. "Someone tells me you speak highly of your students. I mean the ones you teach personally," Anon says, trying to initiate a conversation. "Well, of course, the unicorns at my school of gifted unicorns who show the most promise are some of the most powerful foals in Equestria. As you probably learned, Twilight Sparkle was one of those students." "How many students have had the privilege?" Celestia pauses as she counts how many students she had taken under her wing. I would say several dozen. Mind you, the school has existed for millennia, so an accurate number would be difficult to develop. Did you have students that, well, didn't measure up? Maybe let go is a better term. Not trying to be rude, but I'm just curious. Princess Celestia paused again to think, not to count, but to reminisce. Her heart aches as she remembers a student. Anon sees her face become downcast. I had one student that I taught personally, long before Twilight. I didn't let her go. She abandoned her studies. The student's name was Sunset Shimmer. Sunset's magical abilities were impressive. Her abilities rivaled Twilight's when she was my student. However, at the time, Sunset was impatient. When she didn't become more powerful as quickly as she wanted, she abandoned her magic studies and went to the parallel dimension of our world, Princess Celestia explains. Later on, Twilight helped reform her through an adventure to that dimension, but my failure to show Sunset the error of her ways still haunts me. What happened to Sunset Shimmer is my second greatest failure. I'm going to assume that Luna's transformation into Nightmare Moon was your greatest failure. How did you find that out? Not that it's a big secret or anything, but it's a darker time in our history, or Luna's history. I've been reading The Tale of the Two Sisters recently. The book is an interesting read, however, the story seems extremely vague, surrounding what caused Nightmare Moon to overthrow you. I had a few questions about that, if you don't mind. Celestia sighs. Sure, go ahead. The author says that Luna became Nightmare Moon because of her jealousy of you, since you were the favorite, but the author implies that more caused her descent. I read further, but there was nothing said about it. Was there more that caused her descent? Yes, there was. It was vague because I didn't want to violate Lulu's privacy. When Mother and Father passed away, we took over their roles as rulers of Equestria and their responsibilities. Not only did we raise the sun and moon, but we also waged war whenever we needed to. When Equestria went to war, Luna would lead our armies while I ran the country. Sometimes I would join her in combat, fighting side by side. She was a fearless, sometimes reckless warrior. She was always happy when she came home victorious, but I never saw it as just a happy face mask. Several centuries of battle and losing countless stallions and mares on the battlefield took a toll on her. I never caught on, therefore I never tried to help her with her pain, her jealousy of me, the grief of losing so many soldiers, and her anger that I didn't try to console her, caused her to become Nightmare Moon. I didn't realize she was jealous of me because our parents never showed favoritism. After all, they loved us equally. Luna's anger at me was not misplaced. When she was at her lowest points, I brushed her off and acted like it would pass with time. I realized all of this until it was too late. I completely understand that, Anon says as he puts a grape in his mouth. How so? Princess Celestia asks. I've been where you and Luna were when I was younger. As you may remember, I was not a fan of my younger brother. He was the favorite, much like you. I remember, though you never told me why. Anon sighs deeply and continues. My parents decided to choose my job for me. They wanted me to become a fucking doctor of all things. I didn't want to be a doctor when I was about 8. I wanted to join the army and be a soldier. Special forces, more specifically. For some odd reason, my brother was interested in being a doctor. That's when my parents began to pamper him. They bought him everything he wanted, including items that help him become a doctor. One time, my brother wanted a high-powered microscope for Christmas. That piece of shit cost $1,500. They bought it for him, among other things. I only wanted a new pair of shoes that costed $50 and a football. Did I get the things I asked for? Nope. Their lousy-ass excuse was that they couldn't fit it into the Christmas budget. They spent $3,000 on my brother and $50 on me. My parents treated me like I was some disgrace. Everything I did was not good enough, while my brother exceeded my parents' standards. It was like that all through grade school. To be honest, I thought my brother was enjoying his lifestyle. In reality, he was miserable. There's a saying in my world that says rich people are the most miserable people. That applied to my brother. I only noticed it when I graduated high school, but neglected to help him. He was a dick to me because he was the favorite, and everyone loved him. So, letting him suffer was my sick way of getting back at him. However, one day, I had the feeling that he needed help. It was as if I could sense his pain. So, I rode my bike to my parents' home, since my brother was in 10th grade and still lived there. I managed to get into the house and checked on my little brother. When I entered his room, I found my brother, but not in the way you'd think. Anon pauses. He was hanging from the rafters, with a makeshift noose around his neck. He killed himself, and I could have saved him. I was so angry at him, I refused to help him. Anon sits there in silence after he finishes. He is facing the river and stares off into the distance. A small tear falls from his eyes, and he sniffles a little bit. It has been a while since Anon has cried, although he isn't crying profusely. Then he feels Celestia's large wing wrap around him, pulling him into a tight hug. Anon tenses up, but he soon relaxes. It is the first time he's received a hug from Princess Celestia. It's the first hug he's gotten in years. Celestia's silky fur presses against his body, and her soft feathers slightly brush against his arm. Admittedly, Anon thought the hug felt nice. He silently sheds a few more tears. They fall on Celestia's body. She notices this and uses magic to pick up a napkin to wipe Anon's tears, but Anon pushes the napkin away. It is okay to cry, Anon, Celestia assures. Not to me. Tia, crying shows weakness, and I don't like being seen as weak. Anon stands up and wipes his nose. Enough of the sappy emotional bullshit. I'm going for a swim. Anon takes off his shirt and tosses it on the ground. Then he takes off his shoes and socks. Princess Celestia blushes. She catches herself gawking at Anon's well-built physique. Celestia feels like a school filly watching an attractive colt from across the schoolyard. Not that she has experienced that feeling herself, until now. She shakes her head to break her from the trance. By this time, Anon is waist-deep in the river. Soon, he is deep enough to swim without touching the bottom. Anon swims over to the large rock protruding on the other side of the river. He climbs on it and sits down. Are you coming in? Anon shouts. I'd rather stay here, Princess Celestia replies. It's been a while since I've taken a swim, making her hesitate. Oh, come on, Tia, the water feels great. Well, if you insist. Princess Celestia uses her magic to remove her royal regalia, which she lies next to the picnic baskets. She walks into the river and shivers as the cold water approaches the base of her neck. She swims to a large rock like the one Anon sits on. When Celestia arrives, she pulls herself up but leaves her lower half submerged in the water. Are you okay? You seem already exhausted from swimming, Anon chuckles. I'm alright. It's been a while since I've swam, Celestia replies. There's a shallow area about 5 feet past the rock I'm sitting on. Anon points his thumb behind him. Celestia slowly swims over to that spot. Her hooves barely touch the ground without her neck being submerged. The water gets deeper as you get closer to the waterfall. It gets to be about 12 to 10 feet deep, perfect depth for jumping off the waterfall, Anon explains. Jumping off the waterfall sounds dangerous, don't you think? Celestia says. It's better than wading across the rapids about 100 yards upstream, which isn't as fun as it sounds. You're talking from experience, I assume. Anon nods his head. I only made it about 10 feet deep before I realized I was out of my depth. No pun intended. Princess Celestia chuckles. Very clever, Anon. Anon swims over to Celestia. He teaches her a game or two. He also teaches her how to swim like a human. Easier said than done. It surprises Anon to see Celestia having a good time. She acts like a typical mare having fun in the river, unlike a royal goddess forcing herself to have fun. She laughs like a fool, as does foolish things like splashing Anon with water. He does the same thing as well. Anon and Celestia see sides of each other that they didn't know existed. They played and laughed for hours on end. Eventually, Anon and Celestia ended up at the picnic site. It's about 5:30 p.m. Anon is on his back, letting the sun dry him. Celestia is close by, doing the same thing. The sun's warmth relaxes Anon to the point where he almost falls asleep. He sits up and turns his head towards Princess Celestia to keep from falling asleep. You awake? Anon asks. Celestia replies. This afternoon reminds me of what my friends and I used to do when we were kids. A river ran behind our school much like this one. We'd sometimes skip school and go swimming. We'd go to school, hide our backpacks, and go for a swim. We didn't bring swimsuits the first time we did this, so we swam in our underwear. It was awkward at first since one of my friends was a girl that was developing. 2 guys and a girl being together while being half naked isn't exactly accepted where I'm from. Why not? Celestia asks curiously. The only time a man and a woman are together in their underwear or naked is usually when they're about to passionately fornicate. Oh. Yeah. I must admit, your customs are bizarre. That's putting it mildly. In some cultures in our dimension, women have to cover themselves completely. Some religion thing. Back to your childhood story. Were you ever caught by the teachers? Anon shakes his head. Nope. We started doing that when we were in the 7th grade. The school never noticed our absences because we didn't skip school often. Our parents never found out either. Not that mine cared. When 3 out of 700 students didn't show up for school, who gives a shit? Anon lays back down and closes his eyes. He is on the verge of falling asleep until he hears something. It's a shriek, and it came from far off. The shriek came from upstream. Anon sits up again and looks in the direction. He hears the shriek. Princess Celestia heard it as well. She turns her ears in the same direction. Anon is looking. They both listen intensely until they hear it again moments later. Who is that? Princess Celestia asks. I don't know, Anon replies as he stands. I'll check it out. Stay here. Okay, but be careful, Anon. Anon walks up the path that runs along the river. Every couple of seconds, he hears the shriek again. It gets more apparent as he gets closer. To Anon, it sounds like a little filly. Then 2 fillies on the bank of the river come into view. It is Apple Bloom and Scootaloo, an orphan Pegasus that Rainbow Dash has under her wing. They are at the rapids that Anon had tried to wade across. The roar of the river rapids almost deafens him. Then he hears the shriek again. Anon head snaps towards the river. They are perched on a rock in the middle of the rapids. Sweetie Belle, the full sister of Rarity. Anon sprints over to Scootaloo and Apple Bloom. They spot him, and their faces are filled with fear and panic. Well, that's it for that part. I'm very sorry for for my very bad upload schedules. At least I'm getting more out than I used to, which was not really that long ago. Air quotation marks. But at least I got somewhat of an upload schedule. Somewhat. But yeah, once again, I'm very sorry for that. Recently, I've been sick, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse because, I would still do it anyways. You can kind of hear it in my voice if you really pay attention, but, yeah, I've just been caught up in stuff too, because, school is about to start for me again soon at the end of this month, so I've been prepping for that too, so, yeah. And motivation, all that. But I guess I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter, and yeah, I don't know how often I'll be able to get out chapters or stories all too often because of school, so once again, I'm sorry for that in advance. But I'll try to get things done every now and again on the weekends or so when it does start. Yeah. But I hope you guys have been enjoying the channel so far, and I'm really sorry for the slow uploads. But as you can tell, at least my quality and stuff has gotten a little bit better. Yeah. But, I guess that's all I got for you right now. Stay golden, and have a good day.